Mothers, they're one of the greatest teachers in the world. I'm sure that many of you can think back to lessons that you learned growing up that you still remember today. Well, that was true in the life of Boaz. Boaz learned many things that his mother taught him. Now, you're thinking, who is Boaz and who was his mother? Well, let's look at the mother first. The mother of Boaz was Rahab. Rahab was a harlot. She lived in the city of Jericho during the time of the Israelites' invasion, when they came in to take over the promised land. She was living in that city when Joshua sent out 2 spies to search out the land and to find out just how strong that city was. The 2 spies came into their home, and when the king of Jericho sent soldiers because he heard that the spies were there, she said, well, yes, they were here, but they left early, before the closing of the gates. She had taken them upstairs on the roof of her house, and she had hidden them underneath large stalks of flax, which she had laid there to dry. She told the spies, they took off in that direction, and if you hurry, I'm sure you can catch them. She waited until about dark and went upstairs on the roof of her house where those 2 spies were. And she told them, ever since we in the city of Jericho heard that you were coming, this is what she says in Joshua chapter 2, verse 11. And she says, our hearts melted. Neither did there remain any more courage in anyone because of you. For the Lord your God, he is the God of heaven above and on earth beneath. And she says, I know he protected you, and I want you to promise me that because of this, you will protect both me and my family when you come in to take the city. I know God's going to give you the victory, and I want us to be protected and everything that we own. The spies agreed. They said, yes, we will do this, only if you can meet 2 conditions. First of all, you have to keep it a secret. Everything that we have said to you, even the fact that we were here, you can't tell anyone. And the second thing is, the only way you and your family will be safe when Jericho falls is if everyone, all of you and all of your possessions, are inside of your home. She agreed, but she says, I want a sign. Well, they'd already made her a promise, but she says, I want more than words. I want a token of your promise. I want proof. And they said, well, put down the scarlet cord, and when we see that, we'll know, and everyone will know that this is your house and this is the home to be saved. She agreed, they agreed, and they were let down by a rope and went back to Joshua to report everything that had happened. Days later, when the Israelites marched around that city those 7 times, the Bible tells us in 6:25 that even though Joshua commanded that everything be killed by the sword, the city burned, that Rahab, all of her family, and all of her possessions were safe. Rahab and her family were preserved, and she lived among the Jews throughout her life. Not only did she live with them, she married Salmon, who was of the tribe of Judah. He was one of the princes of Judah. He was Abimelech's grandson, so he had a very long heritage in that tribe. And she and Salmon had a son by the name of Boaz. And then she became the mother-in-law to Ruth and the great-great-grandmother of King David, who's found in, who later became in the genealogy of Jesus. Well, her son Boaz, let's look at him because he's the one that learned the lessons from his mother. Who was he? Boaz grew up in Bethlehem, and he became a wealthy farmer. he became a wealthy farmer by staying in Bethlehem even when famine came, which forced Naomi and her family to leave. While Naomi and her family were away in Moab, Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died. Naomi's two sons, Chilion and Mahlon, married while in Moab. Mahlon married Ruth. But the sad thing is that even Ruth's grandsons died. And so her sons died, and so she returned back to Israel. When she came into town, her daughter-in-law Ruth was also with her. And Ruth said, "Oh, we're poor. Rather than beg and accept charity, let me go out and work. Let me go out into the fields and glean." That's honorable work. And it was there that Ruth met Boaz. Now Boaz, the son of Rahab, came to look over his fields one day. And he said, "The Lord be with you." And his servants all answered, "The Lord be with you." And as he was looking over the field, he noticed this lady, this young woman there, who did not really look like all the Jewish women. And he said to the one over his fields, "Who's that?" He said, "Oh, that's Ruth the Moabitess. She's the one that's been taking care of her mother-in-law, Naomi." Boaz had heard all about her. He knew who she was as soon as he heard the name. And he goes over to her, and he blesses her. And he asks that the Lord's favor be upon her for the kindness that she had shown to her mother-in-law, and because she followed Jewish tradition. And he charged all of his men not to mistreat her. He even gave her abundance of food at lunchtime. He invited her, this stranger, to have lunch with him. And then he told all of his men, he said, when you're out working and you see Ruth close to you, just let some extra grain fall on purpose so that she can pick it up. And he told her, if you'll stay close by my girls in the field and follow them, he said, you'll be safe throughout all the harvest season. Ruth did that. Barley season came to an end. Then it was wheat season. After that, Naomi, the mother-in-law, had an idea. She told Ruth, look, I need to find a husband for you. And what better husband than Boaz? He is our near relative. He is our kinsman redeemer. This is what I want you to do. I want you to get all dressed up. And tonight, when he goes into his threshing floor, I want you to go and lay down at his feet. And lay down. But don't let anyone know that you're there. That night, after Boaz had eaten and drunk, and he was getting tired, he went to bed, and after he was asleep, probably snoring, Ruth went in and laid down at his feet. About midnight, the Bible says that he woke up startled and felt something at his feet, and he realized that it was a woman, and he said, what's going on? Who are you? And she said, I'm Ruth. Cover me. And what she was saying was, let me come under your protection. Take care of me. Basically, she was proposing marriage to him. Well, Boaz praised her because she was a virtuous woman for doing this, and that she had not gone out anywhere else, and that she was following the tradition of the day. And he said, yes, I'll do it. But we got a little problem. There's one that's even closer to you as a relative. Tell you what, I'll go see him tomorrow and we'll get this settled. So he gave Ruth some barley and sent her back to the mother-in-law. The next day, bright and early, I'm sure, Boaz gets up, takes off for the city gate. sits down, and he sees this relative and says, "Hey, come here. Sit down." He did. Boaz called 10 other men with him and said, "You guys, come here, listen. I want you to hear this business deal that such a one and I are going to make." And he told him, he said, "You know Naomi, she is a widow of Elimelech, and he's our close relative. Well, she came back, and she was so poor she had to sell the land. It's no one to redeem it except for you. And then if you don't want it, well, I'm next in line, and I'll take it." Oh, the relative's eyes lit up, I'm sure. And he said, I'll take it. And he said, "Boaz, by the way, the day that you buy that from Naomi, you also have to buy Mahlon and Kilion's field, and Mahlon has a widow. So you're going to have children by her, and they will have the right to the land." Our relative said, "Not me. I want my inheritance, and this is going to spoil things for me. You can have it." And as the custom was in those days, he reached down, took off his sandal, and held it out to Boaz and said, "Here, you can have the land, and you can have the bride." Boaz called all the men of the city that were around him and said, "You heard, I have his shoe. He's given me the right to purchase the land belonging to Naomi and to marry Ruth." Boaz and Ruth were married. Oh, and they had a son. The people of the village were so excited. All the women came, and you know what? Those women named the son. They said, "Ruth has been better to you than 7 sons, and we're going to call this one Obed in your honor." Obed was the father of Jesse, and Jesse was the father of David. So let's look now at some of the things that Boaz learned from his mother Rahab. First of all, he learned, don't judge people because they are different. See, Rahab protected the spies. These people were not only her enemies, they happened to be enemies of all of her people. But she knew that God was with them. So she protected them no matter who they were or in spite of the fact that they were different. So what did her son do? Her son welcomed Ruth, a Moabitess. This people, the Moabites, they were hated by the Jews. And Boaz could have taken up with that and thought, I'm not going to have anything to do with them. She can do what she wants, but I am not going to have a thing to do with her because she's different. She's not like me. Her skin's not like me. Her heritage is not like me. But he said, no. Even though she is a Jew, not a Jew, she doesn't believe the way I do, I'm going to bring her in, and I am going to accept her. Next, he learned from his mother, Rahab, that first impressions are really, really important. Rahab had only one opportunity with the spies. They came up to her home, and when she recognized them as being Israelites and not a Canaanite, she had to make that split-second decision when she heard those officers knocking on the door and demanding that she release them. Would she release them or not? She could have very easily reported them. But she knew if she reported them, if she remained safe, that she would never, ever have an opportunity to save herself and her family. She had to make the right decision the very first time. Boaz also learned first impressions are important because that first day, at his first meeting with Ruth, he had a lunch that led to marriage. He could have overlooked her as a foreigner. He could have said, well, let me go eat. It's about lunchtime, and just ignored her. Because you see, he did not ask everyone to come and eat with him. He didn't give all the workers in the field some of the food that he had reserved for his hired help. I don't know if it was love at first sight or what, but the very moment that Boaz saw Ruth, he decided that he was going to be kind to her and he was going to make a good first impression. The next thing that Rahab taught her son Boaz was be a friend to those who follow God. Great lesson, something that we need to know. It said, the Bible tells us that Rahab aided the spies because she knew what God had done for them. And she knew that if she got connected with the people who followed God, and that if she became one of them, if God blessed them, she was going to be blessed as well. But, like Balaam said, if God had cursed them, and if she cursed them, and God blessed them, then she would be cursed. And she did not want to risk her life, that she wanted to join in with the people of God and receive a blessing. Boaz later did the same thing. He saw Ruth, and he saw that she followed Jewish tradition, or we could say she followed biblical tradition. She obeyed what he had grown up knowing to be right. And because of that, he showed kindness to her. He opened his heart to her because he saw that she was a woman of virtue. He saw that she was a woman who wanted to bless others because that was what the way to his blessing. Perhaps he'd heard about what Ruth had said to her mother-in-law while they were still in Moab. When she told Ruth, she says, where you go, I will go. And there, where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. She said, I'm going to stay with you forever. Wherever you die, that's where I'm going to die. And where you are buried, that's where I'm going to be buried. When she said, your God will be my God, she was turning away from following the ways of the Moabites and turning to the way of the Israelites. That's what Boaz saw in her. Well, we're going to continue this next time, and we're going to learn a few more things that his mother taught him as we follow the life of Boaz, learning from his mother, Rahab.